Welcome to Enlightened, the enlightened journey of life. I am your host, Jen Hamilton, and it is an honor to have you here. I am a conscious life coach and women's empowerment mentor, and I activate a potent level of self and soul inquiry with my clients, which initiates deep and lasting transformation in all areas of their lives. I am here for the full human experience, authentically and audaciously sharing my magic with the world. On this podcast, we're all about mastering life on the way to enlightenment. And as we are here having a human experience, we might as well embrace it all. We play in the space of what is real and tangible, just as much as we play in the space of esoteric and metaphysical. You'll be ignited by deep conversation, whether through my own personal musings, interviews with incredible thought leaders around the world, and everyday divine humans sharing their soulful stories. Thank you for being on this journey. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Enlightened podcast. I'm your host, Jen, and today I'm joined by Deb Blum. Deb is the founder and guide for the Whole Soul Way. Having been an empowerment and transformational coach for women for over a decade, she pulled together everything she's learned on her own path and from her clients into a guided self-paced online course and program. In this program, she teaches a step-by-step process to unhook from fear, conditioning, and other barriers to love so that you can truly enjoy the life you're in and experience emotionally deep and mutually fulfilling relationships. Deb loves to dive deep into subjects such as shadow work, inner child healing, self-love, nervous system regulation, authenticity, spirituality, and conscious living. As you can probably imagine, all of this is right up my alley, and I was so excited to chat to Deb. So without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Deb. Soul Guide Deb. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I've got a question for you to start off with. What inspired you to get up out of bed today?
You are one reason why
Oh, thank you.
we've been having this conversation. I'm going to be really honest with you. I am inspired just by life. Like, I know that sounds so cliche, but it's not like I feel like I just wake up, I'm excited. Maybe it's a little hard for me to get out of my warm, cozy bed, but I'm usually pretty excited just to get up and start my day. I love what I do. And there are a lot of reasons to be happy about being alive.
Absolutely. I love it. And I love the cliche stuff. Like, it's so true, isn't it? Like, we get to, make life whatever it is that we want it to be. And if we don't start our day with excitement and enthusiasm, and it's okay to not start every day like that, but the majority of the time, if we can sort of bounce out of bed with some enthusiasm for, getting lit up by what we do, then I think we're on a pretty good thing.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and you're over in San Fran, and it's the middle of summer here in Australia, so it's the middle of winter for you. How are you surviving the cold, and how do you get up out of bed when it's that cold?
Okay, well, you have to know something. I grew up on the East Coast, which is a lot colder. So here, 50, 60 degrees, it's actually not that bad, but we have been dealing with rain nonstop for
Ah,
like literally today is one of the first days with no rain. And that I love rain, but it can
mm,
get kind of old. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I would
yeah.
say, and I would say for me, um, getting out of bed in the morning, I'm not much of a morning person, so getting out of bed always is a little bit hard for me because I like warm, I like cozy, and I like my soft bed and my blankets. But um, I don't know. I guess like I just don't think about it anymore. I just get up. I'm like, I'm ready to go. And
Yeah. I'm the same with rain. I kind of max out at about 3 days. I'm like, okay, cool, we're done now. Like, bring me my sunshine. However, we actually haven't had rain for like good proper rain or even a storm for quite some time now. And I checked the radar last night. I'm like, when are we getting some rain? I think we're supposed to get some, I think it's tomorrow or the next day. And I'm like, just bring it on. Like, it's just that soul cleansing feeling of the rain falling.
I totally agree. I mean, I actually really do love rain. I like how it feels, but I'm with you. I think maybe for me it might be 5 days because if you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, you better like it for 5 days in a row because often it does. Otherwise you're going to be kind of annoyed.
Yes, yes. We actually went through floods. I think it was last year and then a few years ago as well. We kind of sort of go through phases and it's like, oh, yes, let's like bunker down. Like we'll just make sure we're stocked up with food and we're just going to enjoy the rain. And then it's like, oh, the skylights are leaking or like things are starting to go moldy or the clothes just aren't drying. And it's like, okay, I'm done now.
Totally. Does it rain a lot in the summer? Is that common?
Where I am, yes. So I'm in Queensland. And
Okay.
so even though like it's further north Queensland, it rains a lot because it's such a humid place and that's sort of our more, the tropics. I'm, southeast Queensland in the capital of Brisbane. So it doesn't rain much in winter. It's very odd to get rain in winter, but in summertime we usually get sort of like the big bursts of humidity and then like the really big thunderstorms from there, which is
Mm.
really fun, but they don't last very long. So the southern states like Melbourne's just constantly raining, and their weather's all over the place. They could have 40 degrees Celsius, which is I think it's like around 100 and something in Fahrenheit, and then just be freezing cold the next day. Like you can have a cold front come through on a cold day and it can drop 25 degrees.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I don't live there.
I don't blame you.
Beautiful place. I was born in Melbourne, so I'm very familiar with the weather. And I actually don't mind going down there sometimes in the summertime because I know it's sometimes going to be cold and I just want to escape the heat because
Mhm.
the humidity it does get pretty full on up here in Queensland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Deb, tell us about you and being a soul guide. What is your magic that you bring to the world?
Mm. I think my magic is really around helping people to know themselves, be their true selves, and love themselves.
Mm.
I one day I was recently asked that question, and I thought about it from the context of my boys. I have 18 and 20-year-old boys, and I thought, well, what was most important? Oh, that's what the question was actually. What was the most important thing about raising children? Like what was the guiding thing that was most important with them? And I realized it's the same thing with everybody, which is I want you to live true to yourself. I want
Mm.
you to know who you are, and I don't want you to abandon yourself. And I did that with my kids all the time. I said to them, hold on to yourself. I remember they were going to middle school, and I said to them, when you get to middle school, they are going to try to make you like everybody else because it's easier to teach you, it's easier to keep everybody in control. And I want you to know that at the end of the day, what I care about most is that you hold on to yourself. And if that means that you get into trouble for it, I will have your back.
Oh,
So
what
I
a
feel
cool
that
mom.
way. So I feel that way about every woman that I work with, every person that comes into my life. It's like I would say I'm about radical acceptance.
Oh, radical acceptance. I love that. Yeah. The people that you work with, you mentioned that you work with women. What are they coming to you for?
Mm. Well, so over the years, they've come to me for countless things. I would say pretty much any surface level problem. But then at the end of the day, they knew their soul was calling them back to themselves. Like I just know it. Like they came in and they thought that it was because they wanted to change careers, but it wasn't really that. They really wanted to find themselves, or they were struggling in their marriage, but really what was going on is they weren't speaking up in their marriage and they weren't being their true selves in their marriage. So they wanted to find themselves. So it's always been at the surface it's a problem, and then deeper it's a deeper calling to be guided back to themselves. And I would say now I'm a little more explicit about that, so people come to me often because of that. More my if I were to tell you what I who I typically work with, it's usually someone who has done a lot of things in their life. They've definitely checked all the boxes, and they're kind of going like, I did all the things I'm supposed to do. I got the job. I found the man, the good guy. I had have couple kids, bought a house. We're doing really well. Why am I not as happy as I think I should be? And generally speaking, it's because they lost themselves along the way and they need to reclaim connection to themselves. And that's, I think, one of my gifts.
Yes, I love that so much. Let's talk about the life of a woman, what she goes through in her life, because you just hit so many pieces there. Okay, so it's like the expectation that okay, you finish college or university here, you go to work, you have the career, you meet the lovely guy, you have the children, you buy the house with the white picket fence, but then you get to you could be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you're like, who the fuck am I?
Totally.
What I'm supposed to be happy on paper. Everything is amazing. I'm grateful for what I have, but I'm just feeling so empty.
Mhm.
What is going on with women there? Where has this come from? What is happening?
Yeah. I remember when I was standing, this was 12 years ago, no, 14 years ago, I was standing on my back deck and I was pacing and I said, who is this person living this life? Like that popped into my head. Like, and well, I think that it's actually kind of normal. That's what I really believe. I really believe it's normal. If you look at Carl Jung, he talks about first half of life living and second half of life living. And what I think happens is that while a lot of it is conditioning, a lot of it is specific to women, but I think in general, the first half of our lives, we are in this on this path of like the ego, driven things. It's like we're doing all those things. I mean, listen, we are driven to procreate. That's part of our survival mechanism is to procreate. And for a woman to go through those steps of making some money, building some sort of a foundation, and then deciding that it's time to get married and then having the babies, that's actually what we're programmed to do. The problem is that generally speaking, we're on autopilot. We're living out all of the patterns from our childhood. We're usually in a lot of protective patterns. And I think what happens is we're sick of just the grind. We don't feel like we really even know who we are because we're playing a part. We're playing the part. We're playing the role of the business person or the role of the mom or the role of the wife or the role of a friend. And we're like, who is the person beneath all of the roles? Who is that person who's longing for, well, and I will say absolutely across the board, almost every one of these women, they're longing for emotional connection. They're
Mm,
longing for depth in their relationships. They want something more mutually fulfilling and they're aching inside for it. And that to me is as much as it looks like it's a call to connect with your partner or connect with your friends, the call is really to connect to yourself. That's the emotional longing that we're really, really have is like that deep ache of, I am so disconnected. I'm living this split existence and I want to live an integrated existence. And that's the work. That's the work, right? Is to find our way back. Because that's what Carl Jung would say then second half of life living is when the first half of life living is what does the world want from me?
mm,
And second half of life living is what does my soul want from me?
I love that. I love it. I'm such a fan of Carl Jung's work, and gosh, you hit the nail on the head. Like it's that journey, isn't it? Like we get to a point as women, and it has to shift. It has to shift. At about what age would you say that women start to notice that shift, or like the dial sort of really turns up where you can't ignore it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, for me, it was 39.
Hmm.
I would like 38, 39. I would say that that is a common time for women. There's something about that that's a very much like, you hear about midlife crisis and I always call midlife awakening, but I think that's a common time. But I have women who come to me in their 60s and 70s because we often don't listen. We hear it, it's tugging at us, but we don't listen to it. There are a lot of reasons why. So, I mean, midlife, sadly, is really about 37 for women. Isn't that sad? That's
It is
midlife.
because that's how old I'm turning this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, wait
So
until like I'm
I'm
52.
buying a convertible this year, and I'm not even kidding about that. I was like, "I don't care anymore. I'm done with the mum SUV. And just get me the little sports car."
I totally get it. I totally get it. But yeah, so I think I think it varies, and I do actually think it's getting younger for a lot of people. I think that there are a lot of people who are in their 20s and 30s who are questioning the way that we are living our lives and they're trying to find their way. And I don't believe that it's something like I don't believe we have to um, stop liking things like luxuries and stuff. Like I want to be the person who helps women who's to say, no, you get to awaken in any way you want. Like I don't care if you awaken with the sports car, with the beautiful house, with the luxury trips, and you want to fly first class. That is so fine. Just awaken.
Yeah.
Know what you want. Don't be doing it because other people think it's the thing to do. Do it because that's genuinely what you love and that that you want to be living your best life, whatever that looks like for you. And
Yeah.
if it does mean living in an ashram or, that's fine too, whatever it is for you.
Yep, there's so many ways in which you can have an awakening and find yourself. For me, I work with plant medicine. And so I had an awakening. It's coming up to 2 years since I first sat with the grandmother medicine, and having that just full-blown awakening, just like, oh, everything changes now. Like, I literally, it happened. I had the ceremony on the Friday night. Literally went and quit my job on the Monday. I was like, fuck
Mhm.
this. I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. And I mean, it was already like coming to a point where I was just like, this is not serving me. But I got to a point where I'm like, this is not okay. How
Mhm.
I'm living my life right now has to change, because I came home to myself. I realized I checked in with what is it like with my desires. And the beautiful thing about plant medicine is it'll show you, like it will show you, you've got no choice. As soon as you decide to sit in sacred ceremony with this medicine, you've got no choice but to look at what it's going to show you. And you can fight it and resist it. And that's what I sure did to begin with. But it's always going to show you what it is that you need to see. And then like the integration process from there is being able to say, okay, I'm listening. This is coming forward through my subconscious into my conscious mind for a reason. What am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
What am I going to do to move forward? Because the thing is, I mean, we have free will. We can put our hands over our face or our fingers in our ears and go, la, 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 la. I don't want to listen. And that's fine too.
Yep.
At the end of the day, like I said, we have free will.
We do. And I mean, it was very brave of you to make a decision like that. And sometimes it does, as you said, it takes time for some people because that integration process it can, it can really be hard. It can be
Yeah.
hard. Like I always say to people, listen, you don't have to rush along the journey. You get to go at whatever pace you want. But the more that you get onto your soul's path, the more that you live aligned with your truth, the more everything else unfolds. Usually, the most suffering we have is because we're in resistance to what's true for us.
Massively.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. If we're not living in alignment with what it is that we truly desire, that is the space where we exist in suffering.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so true. Like when I'm working with clients, like I will see their soul. Like that's a gift of mine. I can see their path. I can see what's, ahead for them, and they get to decide whether they want to walk that path. And of course, like we have to go through the layers, because there is so much conditioning, there is so much fear, there is so much noise coming from not only external factors such as, media, music, movies, family, but we've got like generations of ancestral stuff. We hold 7 generations of our ancestors' DNA within our own bodies. Like we're carrying around all their shit as well. Like it's not just our stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no wonder we can awaken, but
Mm,
we can. We can.
mhm.
That's the beauty. And it is a journey. And as you know, I'm sure you know, right? It's like it's a journey, right? Because we're constantly finding new layers and new places where we're willing to shed,
Yes.
keep shedding and shedding and shedding.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to, go to South America and sit in a ayahuasca ceremony to find it. Like that works for some people, absolutely. I'm an advocate for working with plant medicine. However, I'm an earth sign. I'm a Virgo, and so I connect with the gifts of the earth. I've got a beautiful friend of mine, and she has her awakenings through breath work and ice baths. She went and studied in Bali so that she can facilitate for them, and she takes people on a journey through awakening through breath work
Mm.
and cold therapy. Some people find it just by simply having a conversation or listening to a podcast. They might be like, oh my gosh, my whole life's a lie, they just said something that totally resonated with me, now I have to go unpack that.
Yeah.
It could be through therapy, counseling, coaching. It could be through having a reading with a medium. It could just be, connecting with nature. It could be through trauma or an accident, or just being catapulted out of the current life situation that you thought that you were continually going to exist in. I mean, if the world didn't go through a collective awakening in the last couple of years, perhaps someone's hiding under a rock. But we've all been going through this, like in some way, shape, or form, some sort of awakening process. It doesn't all have to, it's not copy paste for everybody. It's such a unique journey to each person.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, because for me, definitely it's been about self inquiry. Like
Mm.
it's been self-inquiry, and that's really the premise of my program, is really on self-inquiry. It's like a lot of people are too afraid. Their trauma has them saying maybe they wouldn't be ready for, maybe eventually they'll be ready for something like plant medicine. But right
Mhm.
now, they're the way that they're living their lives, it's like they're actually pretty reserved. A lot of people who come to me, they're kind of ready. They're wondering, what is all of this here? What are we doing? And what does it mean? And they're afraid of disrupting their lives. And I
Yes.
think when you do
Oh,
plant medicine, you do run the risk of I mean, in a good way, but you run the
yes.
risk of disrupting your lives. And so I think that you're right. There's not one size fits all.
No, and like, throwing caution out there with plant medicine, if you're not called to it, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like 100%. Like if you feel the call, and you'll know it when you feel the call to it. But it's so funny. Before I went and sat in my first ceremony, a girlfriend said to me, she goes, "It's the closest thing I can like relate to dying." And I didn't understand what that meant until I got into ceremony and felt like I was dying. And that's what they call the ego death. And because it strips you bare in a way. It strips you of all of your current set of beliefs and your view of the world, and you don't come back the same. And we have this saying in ceremony, if you have to die, die. Like just
Mhm.
go through the death process. And if you're not ready for that, please don't do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like maybe people will come to me before they go to you.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna come to me, and we're gonna do a slower process, and we're gonna do like a slow ego death.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you can go ahead and do the more dramatic when you're ready for it, because you're right. If you're not ready, don't do it.
100%. I had been on the journey of growth for quite a number of years before I even felt called to do it, and had been in my field for a little bit. I'd been asking questions. I'd watched a lot. I have a subscription to Gaia, which is kind of like spiritual Netflix. So I
Mhm.
used to watch a lot of documentaries on it. And then when I felt ready, I felt the calling. I just sort of sat with it. And then I had a friend say to me, "Hey, is this something you're interested into? Because you have to be invited into a plant family." And it was like, okay, it's ready for me and I'm ready for it. I didn't go out and be like, how do I do this? I'm like, it will come to me when the timing is right. And I work with so many people that are like, I just don't want to do that or can't do it. I'm like, that's good. That means that you're not ready. You need to honor that. Don't do it just because I do it, or you watched a documentary and it changed everything, because it takes a lot to do that. And it's not necessarily for each person on the journey that they're in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things that I find working with clients going through their awakening is that they have to, when they start looking, when they start doing that self-inquiry, things start to change around them, quite radically. They have to then, take responsibility for their actions. They then, they're always presented with a choice then. We don't realize that we have a choice until we realize we have a choice, until we actually do that self-inquiry. And I always say, like, once you know the things, you can't unknow the things. I mean, you can definitely, pull the covers back over your head, not want to get out of bed and be like, la 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 la, it's not happening. What is your experience, like people going through these things, and then it's such a normal thing to contract when you start even just doing self-inquiry. It's like, oh, we're not pulling that container out, we're putting the lid back on it and putting it back under the bed. What is your experience working with women who want to do this work, they want to do the self-inquiry, they want to have the awakening, they want to have a change of life, and then it's like they hit the terror barrier?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I think we have to just know that that's part of the path, like that we can't, our ego, which I call the inner protector, is going to resist to some degree,
Oh yeah.
because I mean, we've been doing it this way. And the reason why, I mean, that part of us is there to protect us and has been there for a long time. And so I like to think of that as a time to just slow down and allow yourself to integrate. And I think that it's okay to do that. But one thing that I did learn is that I have had the most success with people when we actually address it up front. So, right in the beginning of my program, I bring them to what I call befriend the ego. And it's the time where we actually start to, so every part of us, every inner child part, including our protector parts, they all want to be seen. They all want to be known and they all want to be valued. So the idea that we're gonna like exclude our ego and cut off from it and be like, oh yeah, you're just a jerk, you're just a, you're always mean to me or whatever. That is not going to work. What works is actually coming into a loving relationship with deep gratitude for that part of us has been there as our greatest ally. Maybe in many ways outdated, maybe in many ways like way off the mark from what you really need. But her intentions are so they're so good. Her intentions are so good. She really thinks she's protecting you. So I bring them through a process upfront to almost like desensitize, like to tell the ego, hey, we're here to hear you. We want to know all the ways that you're protecting us right now. We love you. We thank you. And then we want you to show us all of the places in us that we've been protecting, that you've been protecting. So I feel like she becomes our way shower. And she's like, she changes her job a little bit. She changes her job from being the person who has to protect all the time. Instead, she becomes a trailhead. She becomes a pointer. She becomes a one, like whenever you show up, oh, there must be some part in me that I don't want to feel. Oh, thank you so much for showing me that. I would have never seen it because it was in my unconscious mind, but you're the pointer. Thank you. So I think if we do that, I find that it's not as big of a deal for people. They seem to be able to navigate it better.
It's so true, isn't it? And like the poor ego gets such a bad rap.
I know.
Like our poor ego. And I always say like the ego is the voice of the subconscious,
Yeah.
because it's trying to protect us because it knows a lot of things that's being stored. And if we remember that our subconscious is 95% of what makes us of our mind, and we only have access to 10%
Yeah.
of it, then if we only have access to that part of the conscious mind, there's a lot going on underneath that we don't even realize is running the show. And the ego is the voice of that. The ego is like, hey, we've got to keep safe, because there's actually a memory in the subconscious, or an experience in the subconscious, or a level of proof in the subconscious that this is not okay. So whether it's been experienced, whether it's been witnessed, or whether it's just like an innate, primal feeling within us, the subconscious has the ego has such a big job to do, and the poor thing gets such a bad rap.
Right. Because we think that the ego is there. Well, so until we understand what the ego is doing, we're just following basically the ego's in charge, right? The ego's like, oh no, you feel this, do that, don't do that, protect yourself in this way, drink that, eat that, whatever it is, right?
Yep,
And
smoke
all these
that, have sex with that. Yeah.
exactly. And so we're on autopilot. We think that's like, we believe that that is who we are. When we start to see and get some separation from, oh, you're just one part of us and you're actually helping me to see all these other parts of me, we realize that it is the bridge actually to make the unconscious conscious. It's actually the bridge. And I feel like there's so many people who are just trying to suppress it, keep it down, and then it just gets louder and louder. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think that it's almost misunderstood. It's
It
almost
is. And when we think about the ego, we think about like someone being in their ego, as in like they're quite vain or, outspoken. And that might be true, but that's not the ego. That is their personality underneath that, because of what's programmed into that subconscious for them to be that way. It could be a coping or protection mechanism. It could be the fact that there's a little person inside of them that is a little bit unhealed, screaming, I need to be seen. How do I be seen in order to be validated? Because that is what I need in order to feel safe. I'm not
yeah.
receiving that right now. What is it that I need? And that's the ego in charge of that, but it's not the ego's fault. It's all of the layers underneath that.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Because I mean, listen, most of us, even if we didn't get wounded in the way, like you call, like, capital T big traumas or something like that, life is traumatic. Like life
It really is.
is traumatic. And very few of us got all of our needs met as children. And that's not that even can be in the best of parenting, because we just can't we can't know everything that our child needs. We cannot know. We will miss the mark. And so our children, I say that as we become adults, we have to pick up where our parents left off, and we have to give to ourselves that which we didn't receive when we were little.
100%. And this is the journey of life. This is why we have children, because like if I look at the way, my parents parented me, it was very different from how they were parented, because they said, I'm choosing to make different choices. I'm not going to do things the same way, even though as an adult I've grown up and gone, oh, I missed out on this. I didn't feel that, and had to do a lot of healing around that. And, my mum's turned around before and she's like, I can't wait for your kids to be in therapy one day and say how much you fucked them up.
Right.
Right. And it's like, do you know what? That's true. Because if there is something that, comes through my son or my daughter that, they have to break something that I've passed on, no doubt there will be like a myriad of things. Then that's fine too. Because that means that we are evolving. That's the whole idea of evolving, right? Is that we change and we grow and we expand in our awareness and our consciousness as we go through the generations. We can't have all the answers now. The answers that our parents had, when we were growing up is not what we do now, and they didn't know any different. That's the thing. We don't know what we don't know.
We really don't know what we don't know, even though that drives me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know my conscious incompetence has a field day with that one.
Totally. It really bothers me. I always said, like, if there was one thing that I really do not like about being a human being, is it's like obliviousness or unconsciousness, right? And it really is so frustrating. And I guess we just have to come into acceptance of it, because it's just part of being a human.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much room, especially nowadays, is to start to bring in so much more awareness. Like we have the tools and it's widely accepted and celebrated. Even the things like meditation. Like that wasn't around in, my for my parents in such a generalized way. Like sure there was, monks and stuff that would, do their meditations, and like there was ashrams, but it wasn't sort of so widely known. There's my word. Whereas now, like my daughter says, oh, we start off our day in class with a meditation, and I'm like, oh my god, yes, yes. And she even says to me, like, Mum, when you tuck me into bed tonight, can you do a meditation for me? It helps me
Mm.
sleep. And I'm teaching her how to do it for herself. Like she's 8 now, and teaching her techniques in order to have a different experience, to self-soothe in a different way.
Yeah.
Especially when I can't be there. I can't follow her around school. I can't follow her to her dad's all the time. I can't follow her around with her friends and be like, oh, just to do this. I have to empower her to do this for herself.
Yeah, for sure. But you're right. Things have changed so much. And I think that, I mean, and that's why sometimes, we look at the world, and I think people get really upset about, where the world is, and they're so almost like defeated. But I think, well, I just think we're just going through transitions, and we're going through these growing pains, and we are evolving. And, I think some people want us to be at a certain place now. And I'm like, but, things happen over a very, very, very long period of time. And
Mm,
that's why even people who come to me and they're like, why am I going through this again? Even for your own personal journey, it can take
yeah.
time, and we do have to be gentle, and we have to recognize that a lot of it is a process.
Oh, it so
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Mm.
And there is no, like, time doesn't exist in this world. Like it exists on a human level, but when we're talking about our spiritual selves, essentially, time doesn't exist. You can't say, oh, well, I'll be done in 3 months' time with this awakening and I'll be a new person. And like that might all be well and good, but it's not linear either.
Mm-mm.
It's not just a straight line where you're like, oh, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's up, it's down, it's backwards, it's forwards, it's a round in a circle, it's a high and it's a low, and it goes through the dark and it goes through the light.
Yeah. 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 Totally. Right.
Yeah. What's been your experience going through your awakening, going through supporting others whilst being a mum? You mentioned you've got, grown up kids now, 18 and 20.
Mm.
What
Mm.
is what has motherhood taught you about this whole thing?
Well, I look at everybody as a teacher,
Mm,
and everybody as a guide for me. And so my kids have been. Now, I was really fortunate that my kids weren't a guide in as much of a painful way as some people's kids are. And my husband has been more of a guide for me from the place of suffering and struggle. Like we've had a lot we've had to go through. And so he's been my teacher. If some people say you can have people who teach you through love and some people teach you kind of through pain. I would say my husband, it's not that there isn't love, but he's taught me, I think we've learned a lot through pain. With my children, a lot of it is they've taught me how to love more.
Mhm.
They've I really believe that it was in being with them that they cracked my heart open enough to be able to see that there was something else inside of me other than the veneer and the facade of having it all together. And I think that was the beginning of it. But one of the things that I learned that has been the most helpful thing, and I'm not sure if this answers your question exactly, but I'll say it and then you can tell me if you want more around it. But one of the things I learned was that whenever my children were doing anything that I didn't like, I used to, I started off with thinking I had to go in and parent them. Isn't that my job? I have to parent them. I have to tell them what they're doing is wrong and I have to help them to learn another way until I realized that actually they were always a reflection for me. And so before I did anything with my kids, I brought it into either my own self inquiry or into therapy, depending on where I was in my life. And I did inquiry and I found, where is this in me first? Whatever they're doing, where is this? Like, is this about how I'm treating myself? Is this about something that I've done that I haven't forgiven myself for? Is this about something that I'm doing to them? Like as an example, if they were, um, I'm trying to think of a good example. It's very hard. They all kind of, unfortunately, as they get older, I don't remember as much of the stuff, or as I should say, as I get older. Um, but let's just say that they were, my son, for example, was um, he would cry over what I considered to be really stupid things, right? And so I could easily have just gone on unconscious on that and been like, Jake, I can't believe you're crying over your freaking shoelaces. Like, come on, it's not a big deal. Like, we're going to be fine. But instead, what I knew was there was something in there for me. There's something in this. And so I would go into inquiry onto, well, what's going on with me? Is there a part of me that I'm not allowing myself to have a temper tantrum over things that, don't have good reason for it, which by the way, that's what it was. I felt that I could only cry if I was justified. And so I had to open up that part of me. And do you want to know what always happened is everything just shifted. He started to cry over the things that were meaningful because for him, a lot of times what he was doing was crying over that shoe or the shoelace, but actually it was because something happened at school. And he started to share with me some of the things that were happening at school, or I became more available to him to hug him and say, it's okay to cry just because you're a second grader. And sometimes being a second grader is hard. And so I was able to I was able to expand beyond the problem that was happening and open up space so that everybody was welcome in their wholeness.
Mm.
Because for me, knew that there was something either I was cutting off from in me or cutting off from in them. So that happened to me over and over again. So I pretty much almost always, if there's any problem going on, I do self inquiry first. I do it in me, and it saves on so much work
Mm.
because we can't
Yeah.
change other people. We can't fix other people. And then I really believe that it's changing generations. I think it's really cycle breaking by doing that.
It absolutely is. And I love self-inquiry. Like it's such a big part of my, like it's in my DNA. Like my mom's a counselor. Like she's always like from a young age, we were asked, the questions at the dinner table about how we were, like what was going on for us. And we thought, oh, mom, you're so lame, back in the day. And like literally I make my kids and my stepdad do a happy sandwich, most nights at the dinner, and my partner, we do a happy sandwich. So we say something that made us happy, something that made us sad, and then we close it with something happy. Then we say what we're grateful for. Then we acknowledge each person at the table. Then we say, where is there room for growth? And then we say, what is our intention for tomorrow? Like I literally have taken what my mum did, which was a couple of questions, and I'm just like, I put it on steroids and amplified it.
I love
My
it.
kids actually asked to do it. My stepson rolls his eyes, but he actually did it with his friends one time. He's like 15, and he had some friends over, and I think they sort of did it jokingly, but I'm in the background like, yes, yes.
That is awesome. I love that. I have to say that because I started my journey a little bit later, I missed the boat on a lot of those things,
Mm.
and my kids weren't open to it. But there were plenty of other ways that I did. I
Yeah.
hope impart some of this on them. But you're right. I mean, I really feel like self inquiry is so important, and I also feel that. And just to go a little bit deeper on the question you asked about, waking up through mothering, I think that for me, I believe that one of the big pieces of waking up is removing barriers to love, whatever the
Mhm.
barriers are to love, right? And so I feel like because of the journey, I have become a mother who could love more deeply and who could also increasingly, as I increased my own tolerance for my own discomfort, I could hold more space for them and whatever they were going through, and I also could hold more space for them in their light and their dark. I
Mm.
remember one time my son came to me because he was really angry about something. And, and he had had some anger stuff going on before, but in this particular time, I had done enough work on my own anger that I could really hold his anger more. And it was the most amazing experience where I welcomed his anger. I was like, you bring it on. I can hold all of you. And I always felt like people couldn't hold my bigness. I always felt people couldn't really handle me or hold my pain. And I didn't feel like I could trust other people. So I wanted my kids to know I can handle you. And so I held his anger. And I will tell you, just recently he said to me, I don't really feel like I have a good relationship with anger. And I'm like, do you remember that time? He's like, yeah. He's like, maybe that's why.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we can honor our kids a little bit more. The more that we awaken to the truth of who we are, then we allow them to be who they are.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I love that you mentioned that because I feel the same with my kids. Like I'll say to them, I'm like, it's so normal to feel angry. I would feel angry if I was in your position. I would feel upset and disappointed. And recently, it was just after Christmas, actually, my daughter had got it's this thing called Sylvanian bunnies. And it's like the little figurine things that have like a tree
Mhm.
house and a car and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, we got a puppy a few months ago. And so puppies just love little things. And the puppy got one of these little bunny figurines. And my daughter was just devastated because it had like a little bit of, he didn't do too badly with it, had like a couple of teeth marks in it. And she's like, it has to go in the bin now. It's ruined. I'm so upset. And she was just beside herself, which I would have been exactly the same. And I said to her, I said, sometimes things do get broken and sometimes, we might feel a bit broken, but that's an invitation to love it even more so. Can you find extra love in your heart for this figurine? Can you love it more than you love the other ones because it is different now?
Mm.
And she really sat with it and she's like, yes, I can. And she takes this stuff on board. My son's not quite there yet. He's 6 and sort of a bit like, oh, whatever, mum. Um, but then a few days later, it happened again with another toy, and she's like, "I've just got to love it a little bit more now."
Oh, oh
It's
my
like,
gosh, that is the
oh,
sweetest thing ever.
I was like, there it is.
Mhm.
And I see her how she is, after school, she'll speak openly about her feelings. She's like, I feel really disappointed today. I got really angry at my friends today. I was really mean to my friends today. Like she is able to articulate her feelings because her feelings are so welcome. And I especially do this with clients as we go through, the full spectrum of human feelings and emotions. And whenever it's associated with a positive or negative thing, we need to depolarize it because
Mhm.
we have to take the sting out of what negative may be. We can't say that anger and frustration and rage is a negative thing because we're making it wrong. We associate negative with being wrong and we associate being wrong with unsafe, and if we're unsafe we might die. That's how our subconscious, that's the process that it takes us on in a nutshell. And so because it's essentially been made wrong, perhaps as when we were children, if we were angry or frustrated, like I know that if I had an argument with my siblings over something I was genuinely upset about, mum would race to the kitchen, she would get second drawer, wooden spoon, spatula, whatever she could grab, and off she went after us, and it was like, I'm going to get this over the back of my ass because I had a feeling. you know? And so
Yeah.
I'm so mindful with my children now, having gone through that experience,
Mm.
to say, what's going on for you? Like, I want you to, like, where do you feel it in your body? Can you just be with this feeling? You're actually safe to have this feeling. I'm not angry at you. I'm not mad at you. In fact, if you need a moment alone, do you want me to stay with you while you move through this? Or do you want to be on your own? And I'll give them the choice. I'll ask them
Yeah.
what it is that they need in that moment.
And then you honor it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and, one thing that you just made me think about that I wonder for you, um, one of the things I really loved about doing inner child work while I was raising my kids is that I would always say to myself, however I treat my children in front of me is how I'm treating myself. So I wonder if you ever do that with yourself of like when you're saying that to your daughter, do you remember that that's true for you too?
100%. And it's taken it that's a journey in itself. The inner child journey has been amazing. And I teach inner child and I support people with inner child work now, but it took me a couple of years whilst I was still integrating it. I had a pretty horrific experience with a coach a few years ago who tried to bludgeon my inner child out of me for the sake of the session. And it was wildly unsafe. And so I went into a full contraction mode and I went, I don't trust you. I don't want to continue this session. Like, why are you trying to pull this out of me? And it felt really unsafe. And I had to really do a lot of work around that,
Mm,
and, work out why this person felt the need to do that, for the sake of the session or whatever it was. But what it did is it showed me how much safety has to be created between therapist and client for any of the inner child work to go on, because there could be a very scared little person inside of them, or someone that's not ready to do. If someone's not ready to do inner child work, you have to honor that.
yeah.
And so for me, going through my parenting journey, especially having a daughter, has been such an eye-opening experience as I've gone through that inner child work for myself, because absolutely, like, my children are not only they're a part of me, but they're a reflection of my experience. And I
Mm,
see so many elements of both my son and my daughter that have reflected in my experience as a child. And so
mhm.
honoring the little girl within me that had had that experience, and then helping my children to move through things in a different way, is also part of my inner child healing journey.
Yeah, it really is. Like even it's so funny because, reparenting when I'm doing reparenting work with someone who doesn't have children, it's a little weird to be like, "Oh, what your inner child wants right now," if they're saying this, is like to snuggle in bed, but then they go into bed, they're like, "Well, who am I snuggling?" But when you're doing it with your actual children, I used to just be like, "Okay, there are 3 of you, like my inner child and the 2 of you, and we're all snuggling and watching Phineas and Ferb or something
Yes.
like that. We're gonna all snuggle and cuddle up." And so it's a way that we can honor their experience, honor our experience. And really, I just claim it. I claimed it. I always claimed it. Whatever parenting I'm doing, I'm also reparenting.
It's so true, and it's such a beautiful thing to do. And it's like, I'm so grateful for my journey that's brought me to, where I am as a coach, to be able to not only do my own healing journey, but support others and my children with it. But having to go through the parts where it's been wildly uncomfortable to work with someone who felt the need to, bring my inner child forward when I wasn't ready,
I know that's
because I know how that feels now. And I'm so mindful, even more, like, I'm hyper aware now about, pre-framing inner child work before doing that with someone. And inner child work has been part of some of my programs. And I always say to people, if this is not calling you right now, if you're not in a space to do this, please don't feel obliged to do it,
yeah,
because you're under no obligation. It's not just like, oh, this is the part that we're moving through, keep up kind of thing.
yeah.
It's not. It's a tool to go back to and reflect in, if they need it at the time. But if someone's not ready for inner child work, um, then they get to hold that power to say, no, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up something really important for the whole path, right? It's sort of you brought it up as it related to plant medicine,
Mm.
as it relates to inner child. I even think sometimes for meditation for some people, it's like it's not the right
Yeah.
thing. It cannot be the most trauma sensitive thing at times. And so we have to but the problem that we have is that so many of us, when we're earlier in our journey, we don't trust ourselves. So we put our trust in another person. And I'm hoping that the work that you and I both do, that we are cultivating that inner trust with people, not just through the process but also by offering invitations like that and saying don't do things that you're not, that don't feel, if it's a no for you, or even if it's not a yes for you,
Mm,
then it's okay. And no one is here. That our work, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like our work is guiding people back to themselves to say, I want you to know you. I'm not here to be your guru. I'm here to have you be your guru. I want to show
absolutely.
you how to be your own guru.
Yeah, and for me it's like I will give you all the tools that I can for you to come home to yourself.
Exactly.
And for me, I work with like ceremonial cacao is a plant medicine. It has the ability to nourish and nurture us whilst invoking the spirit of the cacao spirit. And for some people, just journeying with cacao in a ceremony, perhaps they're working with oracle cards, perhaps they're journaling, perhaps it's just the permission slip to take half an hour out to enjoy a hot chocolate, to just sit and be with themselves without any expectation to do anything, then that's where they need to be.
Yeah.
I don't say like I say to everyone that comes through my door, you don't get a gold star or a red cross against your name if you do or don't do something.
Mhm.
This is your journey. I will hold people accountable if they say I need accountability support, or if they say they're going to do something and they're not do it, I'm going to hold a big mirror up and be like, "Hey, this is what you said that you wanted." But for me, it's not completely tough love. And
Yeah.
it's not saying, hey, this worked for me. This is what you need to go and do. I say, this is what I can provide for you to come home to you. Do you need support with cacao as you're going through your awakening? Do you feel like there's some deeply ingrained beliefs that you want to have, either like we can do talk therapy or we can do hypnotherapy? There's components of psychotherapy that come in. I've done NLP masters, so there's a lot of that in there. There's a lot of self-inquiry. There's literally, as a mentor, I speak through my experience. I share so many parts of my journey and how I've, come full circle with some things, and the fact that I'm still human and on the journey too. I've not mastered
Yeah,
anything in
totally.
life. It's an ongoing journey, and some people are just like, "Oh my gosh, that's all I needed. Thank you."
Yeah.
And there's so many modalities out there to support that. And I it's there are coaches and there are therapists and there are facilitators out there that are like, you got to do it this way and you got to do it in this time frame, and that's all there is. And it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
no.
Yeah, well, I think that was even more common in the past. I think it's starting to shift because it really was almost like perpetuating the dominant paradigm, right? Of like, there is someone who knows more. Now, granted, you do know more. And the truth is, you do know more and you do have information that they need. And you do have an ability to um, create experiences for people. And you also do embody a level of consciousness that they are going to benefit just energetically from being with you. So there's a lot you
Mhm.
offer, but it's about not like, I think in the dominant paradigm, it's like, I know best versus a growth model like of a hierarchy is more like, here, I'm here to invite you to find more
Yeah.
of you, and here are some things for you to consider. And I think that there's still a lot of dominant paradigm in our world, so it makes sense to me that there are a lot of coaches that are going to be embodying that still.
Yeah. And at the same time, the there will always be people for them too, because
For
there will be
sure.
people on their frequency that say, oh my god, that's my person, I want to learn from them. And I've had that in my own experience. I've had people that I've looked up to, and at the time, oh my gosh, they were exactly what I needed. They came into my life and I took everything, as they said, as gospel. I'm going through my own unfucking process with that as well at the same time. And I'm running a program called the Unfucking, because there has been a lot, in the personal development industry where people have been made out to be gurus.
Yes.
People have had high profiles or had a lot of success in their field, but that's been all well and good. And then it's like, hang on a second, I actually wasn't given the choice as to check in whether this particular model served me. Because I think, through those stages of awakening, what we don't know. So we look for someone that does know. And then we're like, okay, what they said is right. I have to follow that. And then we get to a part of our journey where we go, hang on a second. hang on, I have a choice here. This
Mhm.
actually doesn't align with me. When I get really clear on what my values are and what experience I want to have in this lifetime, this doesn't align for me. And so we have to go through an unraveling process for maybe part of it. Doesn't have to be all of it. There's definitely things that I have learned personally and professionally that I will continue to use because it's so amazing. But there's also things that I've been like, oh wow, that version of me doesn't exist anymore. And I have to be like, okay, what I said before was right for me then. However, now it's changed and it's grown and evolved. And I think like in our personal evolution, we have to get really comfortable with that.
Yeah, yeah, you're so right, and I can see that too for me. But I think you're right that you're at a certain level of consciousness, you might be. It's exactly what you need. You know, there are people who you really do need them to really tell you, like, tell it like it is, and oh, I'm gonna follow you. Um, and I just say it's a sign of growth when we finally do find ourselves, and they were part of that journey. Like those people were part of. I consider them to be part of how I found myself. They might not have invited me in that way, but they certainly showed me something that I needed to know. But yeah,
Yes, I have that with like past friends, past lovers, past jobs. Like you don't get to where you are on your journey without going through all of the stuff, without going through the heartbreak, without going through the shame, without going through the pain and the trauma and all the joy and the excitement and the fun times and the pleasure and all of that as well. It's all part of the human experience. And if we're avoiding the pain, if we're avoiding the trauma, if we're avoiding the heartache, then we're actually bypassing the
yeah.
human experience. And guess what's going to keep circling around to us until we actually feel it and heal it and move through it.
Yeah, you're right. But you know, it's so funny because I often say this about bypass though, is I do believe that there is a time and a place. Like I don't like when people shame people for bypassing because I'm like, but wait a second, there can be times when bypassing is the safest thing for you. You know, you needed
Yes.
to bypass and then eventually you don't need to bypass anymore. But it's okay to bypass when I mean, some people get stuck in bypassing, and that's what I think people are talking about a lot of times.
Mhm.
But often I think that bypass serves us.
100%. I'm the same with compartmentalization. I'm like, if you knew what was going on in my brain, like I have like a really big sketch pad thing that I put all of my ideas down. I put all of like different business models, different like programs, everything goes in there. And then one day I remember my brain was just so full of information and stuff and things. It was going at a million miles. So I sat down and I drew boxes as if they were containers and I wrote all of the things down and I was like, okay, this is the container about this. Like it was right at the start of COVID. I think I had I think I had 3 lovers on the go at the time. And I was like, they're all giving me grief. And I had like I was finishing up at a rental, so I had to get my bond back. I had to get it cleaned. I was moving house. I had to organize storage. I had stuff going on with friends. I had like no idea what was happening in the world. I didn't like my income was changing because I wasn't able to work. My mind was so full and so busy. And so what I did is I went, right, what boxes do I need to open? Put this stuff in this box, put the lid on it and put it aside in my head so
Mhm.
that I can focus on the other piece. And Paul, compartmentalization in psychology gets a bit of a bad rap, but I'm all for it. I'm like, let's just deal with one box at a time. When
I
we're
agree.
done with that box, put the lid on it, put it aside. Okay, now I got to pay my taxes. All right, now I got to deal with this person who's giving me grief. Now I got to go to the gym. Do you know what I mean? Like if it serves you, work with it.
I actually worked with this soul guide who I think is probably one of the oldest souls that I know, certainly. And he said compartmentalization is absolutely a necessity and it's a sign of a healthy human being. And he said anyone who tells you that that's not true, that's just a stage that they're going through. He's like the highest evolution is someone who can compartmentalize and who can put aside something. For example, like you have a crisis in your life that you can put aside one thing and then focus on the other thing. And that's actually something that's an evolved being thing. That's
Oh,
just
look at me. You can
you're
just call
so
me
evolved.
Guru Jen now, Deb. Like, I'm just going to change my title. I'm like so evolved because I can
So evolved.
compartmentalize. It's literally just my Virgo brain. Like, everything has got a color coded tab inside my brain. It's ridiculous.
What's your actual birthday? What's your birthday?
27th of August, I'm a Virgo.
Okay, so I'm September 23rd, and I'm right on the cusp of Libra and Virgo.
Ah, yes.
I
Wow.
got a
And
little bit
which
of
one
both.
do you find that you fall more into?
I really am kind of both, and it
But
does
yeah,
depend. So I think it's nice. It's actually very, very typical of me to not fit into a box.
I love it. I love it. My daughter's a Libra, and so is my sister. And so I'm just so used to like the emotions of a Libra, and my son is a Cancerian. My father and my partner are Cancerians. And emotional men are just beautiful. Like it's just
Mm.
like to see the men around me like in the fullest expression of like the emotion that men can be. I love it. Cancerian men are just darlings.
Yeah, what a gift. What a gift.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What is it that you would say to our listeners? Like, what is another piece of wisdom? We've gone through so much today, but what is a piece of wisdom that you would like to instill on our listeners?
Mm. I think it's that it is time for women to make their self acceptance project bigger than their self improvement project.
Oh, I've got
Mm.
chills. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where we are. I think that what we do is we tell ourselves and tell our inner child that we're never good enough. That's what we're telling. Every time we're trying to fix ourselves and do it better and do more and make ourselves a better person, we're really telling ourselves we're not good enough. We're just perpetuating that wound.
Mm,
And that doesn't mean that we don't do things to better ourselves, but the project of self acceptance has to be bigger. It has to be contained within self acceptance. Like, I am accepting myself, and there are also things I'm being honest about that I want to improve, but that's not because I don't love myself. It's just
mm,
because I love, it's because I love myself. Right?
yeah.
It's like, how do we improve? We improve because we love ourselves so much
Mm.
that we want more for ourselves rather than a deficiency mindset.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And I think like that self-improvement is a byproduct of the acceptance. The
Yeah.
improvement comes from that space of acceptance. It coexists so beautifully together. Whereas if it's the other way around, it's a differently like it's a hindered experience.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Oh, that's amazing. Deb, you have been amazing to talk to. How can our listeners track you down, find you, work with you, receive all of the juicy goodness that you are?
Thank you. Well, the easiest place to go is just to go to my website, which is thewholesoulway.com. And then you can find your way to free gifts on there, to my program, to any other thing that you want to find me. I'm on TikTok. I'm on not so much Instagram, but TikTok and Facebook.
I'm going to stalk you on TikTok because I love to. I have like set time every day where I get to go on TikTok because like my algorithm shows me like all the woo woo stuff and I bloody love it.
Me too. That's one of the things I love about TikTok is that it really does get to know you and then you see the things that you actually want to see.
Yes, it's actually inspiring me. I do need to pull my finger out and like just create content for TikTok again because you can have a lot of fun on there. So yes,
Oh,
you've inspired me.
I can totally see you creating great stuff on there. I mean, I was on it big time and then I have been about 2 weeks not on it and I'm feeling a little guilty about it, but it's a fun platform.
Have you gone viral? Have you hit the tens of thousands?
No. I
Not
mean, I have like 5,000 followers and I have like 25,000 or 23,000 likes or something like that, which I think is a big deal for a 52-year-old woman on TikTok. I mean, come on,
That's
TikTok is actually for
amazing.
the young
I
people.
have like probably 5 people, and I think the most I've hit is like 1,400 views, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." I'm much more active on Instagram, but yes, you've inspired me. Thank you, Deb. You've inspired me in a lot of ways in our chat today, but absolutely, I'm gonna stalk you on TikTok. One last question before we wrap this up. Deb Blum, what is the meaning of life to you?
Just such a small question.
Just a little one.
Just a little tiny one. Oh, I think I'm going to say, and I bet you if you asked me next week, it might be different, but
Always.
I think I'm going to say the meaning of life is to really truly find our truest selves, which means that we become love.
Ooh.
And then we show up in service to walking other people home to their true selves. That's what
Mm,
I think. I
I
think so.
feel that. I love that. That is
It gave
beautiful.
yeah, it gave me a little tears, so I'm thinking that there's something true. It might be
You've hit there.
one of the
Yes.
many.
Yes, that's beautiful. Deb, thank you so much for joining me today. We will link
Mm,
to all of the ways in which our listeners can find you in the show notes, and we'll definitely have you on again soon.
right. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlightened podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.